Welcome to our final episode in the Indonesia series, where we recap our time cruising in this remarkable part of the world. Indonesia is a unique and beautiful country that consists of over 17,000 islands, so it is no wonder many cruisers visit its shores. In 12 short months, we travelled approximately 4,000 nautical miles in Indonesia. There were highs and lows, which we will share with you, so stay tuned for the good, the bad, and the ugly moments from our time in Indonesia. This episode will no doubt be controversial, but it's our opinion based on our personal experiences, so you can take it or leave it. We started our journey in the Banda Sea, checking into Sumlaki in the Tanimbar Islands. We then sailed through the Kai Islands and into the Seram Sea and Indonesia's West Papua region, followed by the world-famous Raja Ampat Regency. Then we made it across the Halmahera Sea to North Maluku, where we waited to cross the Malacca Sea to North Sulawesi, cruising westward and down into central Sulawesi before heading south through the Button Strait to Bau Bau. We then crossed the Gulf of Boni to Salea Island, followed by the Flores Sea to Labuan Bajo. We explored the Komodo National Park and made passage to Banta Island, Lombok, Bali, and then through the Surabaya Channel into the Java Sea. We called into Jakarta and then Krakatoa before we reached the Indian Ocean to explore Sumatra. And we did our final visa renewal in Padang. The boys enjoyed surfing in the Mentawai, Tello and Banyak Islands before we checked out in Sabang. Our number one favourite thing about cruising Indo were the stunning and secluded anchorages. Our family really enjoy remote and off the beaten track kind of travel, so Indonesia really checked this box for us. Sometimes we were surrounded by virgin rainforest with only the noises of nature surrounding us, a serene and humbling experience. The spectacular natural landscapes of Indonesia are truly breathtaking. The wilderness of Indonesia is vast and special. Throughout Indonesia's archipelagos, you can explore diverse and visually stunning landscapes, which include, and are not limited to, low-lying atolls, towering volcanic mountains, virgin rainforests, wondrous waterfalls, cavernous caves, and also include many ancient, historical, and UNESCO heritage sites. Indonesia is the second most biologically diverse country in the world. The unique and endemic species to be found in Indonesia is extensive and impressive. It was a big highlight for us to see some of these animals during our travels. Sadly, some of these unique species are now critically endangered, and I came to the stark realisation that our children may be among the last of their generation to see them in the wild. We had some of the most memorable diving experiences whilst in Indonesia, from snorkeling in Raja Ampat, immersing ourselves with stingless jellyfish in the Tajians, swimming with whale sharks in Gorontalo, being surrounded by a squadron of manta ray in the Komodos, and freediving in Ahmed with some of the best in the business. The boys also got to surf some of the best waves of their lives in Indonesia, having waves completely to themselves up in northern Halmahera, to getting amongst it with the pros and surf safari guests at the world-famous surf breaks in the Mentawai, Tello and Banyak Islands. The boys sure did carve it up in Indo. Indonesian people are very friendly, and we enjoyed many interactions, be it at the market, or a small village, or even big cities. The kids were always especially friendly and happy to try out their English on us. We will never forget our drumline welcome into Selpel, or cooking lesson in the Mentawais with Susanna, or special lifelong friends we made during our time in Indonesia. It ain't easy. Getting fuel, gas, provisions, disposing of rubbish is not always easy in Indonesia. Being that there is rarely reliable wind to sail, you will need to fuel up regularly, and there are no fuel docks to speak of, or none that we found anyway. So it must be done manually by filling jerry cans. We also recommend you set up a polishing system to polish fuel into your tanks, because oftentimes there is water or contaminants. It's quite a mission going to shore with jerry cans to try and find someone to help you transport them to the Pertamina and back again. And it's pretty labour intensive in the heat of the tropics, let me tell you. Being that our Aussie gas bottles have different fittings, finding the correct fittings or decanting gas was another hurdle that we had to overcome. Sometimes there aren't bins available for waste, or if you take it to shore, it is thrown in the ocean. So for lack of a better option, we had to burn our own waste at times, which is not ideal. Getting provisions can also be tricky in remote areas, and at times we even had to dispatch our own chicken and process it. So I guess if you are a meat eater, be prepared for that, and perhaps stock up on packaged meat when you're in big cities. It ain't cheap. There's a common misconception that it is really cheap to cruise in Indonesia, but I'm here to tell you that it ain't. We spent over 6,500 Aussie dollars on visas alone, and our insurance also went up to $10,000. Because there is rarely any wind to sail, as I mentioned previously, we spent over 7,000 Aussie dollars in diesel and unleaded fuel supplies. Now there are also high national park fees or entrance fees to many places on top of this. And if you should ever have to go to hospital, you better pray that your insurance will cover your costs. Bureaucracy. The immigration process for visiting sailors in Indonesia can be convoluted and challenging to navigate. During our time in Indo, we had to complete a visa renewal every 2 months. This meant making sure there was an immigration office at our next intended destination and planning around the visa due date. Every immigration office also seemed to have a different set of rules, and it could take anywhere from 2 hours to 7 days to have our visas processed. We encountered corrupt agents who expected or asked for bribes to process our visa faster, or alcohol whilst doing onboard inspections. There were also agents who were inexperienced in dealings with private sailing vessels, trying to enforce the same rules and charges on us as commercial shipping. So make sure you have a good agent who can assist you if there's a problem. The best and most professional immigration office we visited, hands down, was in Tabello, Halmahera. Boardings. I cannot tell you how many times we were boarded in Indonesia, but I know that it was enough to give me vivid nightmares of strange men inside our boat. Oftentimes they were harmless fishermen, but once we had armed authorities trying to intimidate us into giving them money.
We just had for the 4th time, I don't know if you can see out there, there's a big Panisi boat out there, and then there's a longboat. This is the 4th time this has happened to us now, of someone claiming to be a ranger for this area, coming out and checking our permits and blah blah blah, and trying to fleece us of money. So we just woke up early, woke up to the sound of feet on the deck of our boat. These guys here just decided they'd hop on and walk around the top of the boat. There's kids are all over the place, they're all just walking up and down. One of them was on the fucking roof. And then when I told them to get off, they climbed down the sugar scoops and they're trying to sell me dried out seahorses that they've got from the reef. They've caught live seahorses and they dry them out in the sun and trying to sell them to me. And then when I wouldn't buy any, then he was telling me that he needed alcohol. He needed alcohol for me to stay here. So, yeah, daily basis.
Selfies. If you want to know what it's like to be a celebrity, then travel to remote Indonesia, the land of the selfie. We were photographed and filmed everywhere, from walking down the street or even in the aisles of the local supermarket. Sometimes on public transport or tours, people would film us pretending to be reading something on their phone. Everyone wanted a photo of the bule, and while at first it was quite entertaining, it soon became quite taxing, especially for Charlize. Indonesian people were obsessed with her white skin and wanted to touch her or get a photo with her, and men wanted to marry her. Some encounters were okay and encouraged, for example, when we invited some young Bajo girls aboard one afternoon. But there were also times that got my hackles up and made Charlize feel anxious. We became particularly wary parents when a young immigration officer asked Charlize her age and wanted to take her off to a room by herself, something that was not required for any of the rest of us. Brendan stepped in to say no and supervised her carefully, but sadly it tainted all future interaction with males in Indonesia. The pollution in Indonesia really caught us off guard. While we expected it to a certain extent, we didn't anticipate the sheer amount of plastic that we saw washed up on beaches, including national parks like the renowned Raja Ampat, but also within harbours, reefs and open oceans. It was very confronting and made me cry on several occasions because I felt overwhelmed and helpless to make any change or impact. Indonesia is one of the most beautiful places on earth, yet it is treated like a dumping ground, which is just heartbreaking to witness. As of 2024, Indonesia is now the second biggest plastic polluter behind China, producing 3.2 million tonnes of unmanaged plastic waste per year. While poverty and lack of environmental education also play a part, the high volume of consumer products targeted at Indonesians using single-use plastics and packaging is like nothing I have ever seen. And very little effective waste management and recycling initiatives seem to be taking place within the country, especially in the remote areas. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is now the most polluted city on earth, and the poor air quality is causing ongoing health issues for much of the population. Fishing practices. Much of the Indonesian diet revolves around fish, but sadly, their fishing practices are not sustainable. Indonesian waters are home to 37% of the world's marine species, many of which are endangered as a result of unsustainable and unregulated fishing practices there. Many times we went snorkeling only to discover that the reef had been blasted. I think during COVID some areas were hit pretty hard by blast fishermen because there was no one watching. Even in marine parks, the evidence of the blasted reef below was obvious, and even though it is an illegal practice, it still occurs far too often. We got the fright of our lives when we witnessed it firsthand. A blast fisherman in Sulawesi dropped a stick of dynamite in such close proximity to our boat that the percussion sounded like our rigging was coming down. Had one of the kids been in the water at the time, I shudder to think what could have happened. During our time living on the sea, our family have become attuned and aware of our environment. We love the sea and its diverse and amazing ecosystems that protect us, nourish us, and carry us. But witnessing its demise and the impact of humankind has been a hard pill to swallow. The problem is bigger than we imagined. So our message is this: we all need to do better. Every country and every person. We need to be aware of the plastic problem, and work together on some solutions before it's too late. There is hope. There are some incredible NGOs and people on the ground in Indonesia trying to undo some of the damage and implement change. We hope that things improve in Indonesia because it truly is a beautiful part of the world. Regardless of some of the negative experiences we had, we are still grateful to have travelled there, and we will never forget all the incredible and amazing experiences we made and shared as a family. Onwards and upwards.